AnimeNEXT.com.
We'll start with the basic question. How did you get into voice acting, and why did you get into it?
It was something that came last kind of in the span of career things. It started off with stage and movies and TV and commercials, and then voiceover found me and through an audition through my agent, and I went, and no, people didn't hate it, and they kept me around. And that was over 10 years ago. So then I just stuck with it and took all the experience and kind of training I had from other aspects of acting and learned more of the craft. And I mean, when I was in college, we spent 4 years on voice alone. And so it wasn't something where I just woke up and decided to do it. I'd wanted to be an actor since I was a little kid. So this is just kind of part of kind of fulfilling that dream for myself, you know. Yeah.
Were there any actors that inspired you to pursue acting?
Oh, absolutely. Like, especially, when you're a kid, for me, I didn't really think about the fact that with cartoons that there are actors doing that. I just thought there's a vault, and they let them out, and they do their adventure, and they put them back in the vault. But, so I didn't really think about it in that aspect, but as far as on camera guys like Gary Oldman and Al Pacino and De Niro and all those guys, and especially all of the Spielberg stuff. So, his involvement with Indiana Jones and George Lucas with Star Wars and all the geeky stuff I was geeked out about. So I spent an inordinate amount of time in front of the television because I was an only child. So television and video games are things that I was around all the time.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of our favorite performances that you've done for the Absolution Network is with Big Windup,
Oh yeah.
which is probably one of the better sports animes out there, and it has a fantastic English dub. Which your character is a wonderful third baseman. What was your experience on Big Windup?
I played baseball as a kid and played a little bit in high school, and it was fun to go back and have some baseball time in an animated form. And my little clone plays baseball, and he's MVP for his team. And right now, actually, they are number 2 in the state, and so they just won last night. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to the game because I was making my way here. But they're number 2 in the state, so it was fun to be involved in a show that is right next to a sport that is involved with the sport that he really likes. And so it was fun to work on that show. It's always great to go and play with the other cast members, even though we don't record at the same time. But getting to sit back and watch it all put together at the end is a lot of fun. It's a big treat. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to bring up one of your latest projects, Free.
Yeah.
I wanted to know if you'd be willing to talk about the fact that it's pretty much a reunion of Warren High Host Club cast, and now that you have Johnny Young Bosch on board and a few other people.
Yeah, that was, everyone sounds so good in that show. I even the mix engineer who mixed the show, who's mixed hundreds of shows with Funimation, said he really called that show out and specifically and said that it it sounded great. The show really sounded great. I mean, you've got Johnny and Vic and Ian, everyone involved. They sound so good in the show. Us getting together, it was an interesting process because we got a phone call. I didn't audition for the show. It was nice to just get a phone call and be like, "We want you to be Haru," and I was like, "Done." But it was weird because they asked, "Would you like to do?" And I'm like, "Why would you?" That's like saying, "Hey, does anyone want this candy bar? You don't really want this, do you? Do you want this?" It's like, "Well, yeah, let's do it." So it was fun to hop in the saddle and work with Jerry on that and do all the seasons of the show. So it was fun. Yeah. Zero.
Were there any lines that you've said that have really captured you or like stuck with you?
When we're in the show, when we're recording it, we're seeing the script for the first time, and we're trying to pay attention to the flaps, to what's going on in the show, making sure we're in voice, remembering what's happened before, and so there's not a lot of time to reflect outside of being in the moment as the character. And also, once we see that part of the script, we don't see it again once we've done it. And so it's hard to remember lines that really stood out, save for something like some Sergeant Frog lines, because a lot of that, the script was well written, but then there was a great deal of it also that was improvised, and some of it stuck. And lines that I remember are lines that I fit in as inside jokes that with my people in my social circle that stayed in. So it was nice to it was nice to be able to do that with a show like that. But as far as like specific lines, it's tricky because I feel like people remember lines from movies and things like that because they've seen them again and again and again and again. And with these shows, it really is an interesting process where we work on it one time and then we never touch it again. And it's just, that's it. And so the only time we really get to see it again is if we're at a convention premiering it and we're watching with the fans. And so it's remarkable how we don't, unless you're a mix engineer or you're editing the show, you don't see it multiple times. So once it goes in, it's like, okay, boop, there we go. So yeah, it's a tricky process.
So, as you said before, you started out as an actual actor, so you had worked on stage and in commercials and that stuff. What did you in particular on working on stage, helped you for working in the booth?
Well, I think the big misconception that people have, and not on purpose, they don't see it that way, is that voice acting is real acting. It's not. It's all acting, and so when we're in the booth behind the mic, we're still very physical, and we're standing when we do it. We're engaging the body when we're doing it. You take the process into your whole body. In terms of how it's different from stage, well, with stage you get a script for 4 to 8 weeks, and you're working on it, and you're building an arc for a character from beginning to end, and you're building a physicality with the character, a voice, thought process as to why they're doing what they're doing, and you really get very intimate with that character and the whole storyline. And you perform it again and again and again. I remember doing a show, we did 50 plus performances of a show, and you have to make it fresh and new every night, so when the audience watches it, it's like they're seeing it for the first time, but they think you're experiencing it for the first time. So it's a very different process. But I mean, make no mistake, it's all acting. It's all, whether it's voice acting or you take the voice out of it, it's the 50% of the word voice actor is actor. So it's all the same thing in terms of it working the acting muscles. Just it's a little bit different. Like stage acting is different from commercial acting, where commercial acting is very bright, depending on the commercial, but generally like your McDonald's commercials and things like that, it's very bright. It's high energy. It's the acting is in the bite of the food. Film acting can be very different, much more subtle than stage because the camera's right here. Voice acting, it's all different shades of kind of the same, the same process. Yeah.
Here, I'll go through a couple of the characters. You mentioned Haru already. Judar from Magi,
Yeah.
Natsu. I was wondering, you have pretty much a really wide range of personalities that you can bring out. Do you have any kind of method for figuring out what you're doing for each of those personalities and characters?
Well, I've been very fortunate to have those opportunities to do different personalities and different roles like that. And I think what it is it comes back to the training and I think with anything, when someone has been in the game with any profession for a long enough time, it comes down to your experience and your training, and also hopefully some amount of talent that you bring along with it. Outside of that, it's a lot of people around you making really great micro decisions to help you get there. So it takes the whole village to make one person rise up, and so it's been great to be a part of that. And as far as preparing for something like that, I look at the story and I just do a little bit of internal research as to, okay, well, if this person's in this situation, well, what do I think would lead them to that? And that's where the director comes in, like, tell me a little bit about the history of this character. What's his relationship with that character? What does that mean? Does he like to fight? Does he not like to fight? Is he a lover? Is he a fighter? Is he a dreamer? Is he a doer? And you start to form some semblance of that character's soul. And also it helps because you have the original Japanese to look at with anime specifically. And so it's a layered process. And so you just, at the end, you hear the bing, the cake comes out, and it's done. Yeah.
Out of all of your characters, who's the most like you and the least like you?
I would say Natsu is the most like me because I do have a tendency to be passionately impulsive about things. I care very deeply for my true friends. A character that's least like me is Rin from, what is it? No, Apos from the show Rin. Yeah, that I don't sit around and plot people's torture. Maybe for a millisecond I think about it for some people, a couple people. But outside of that, I don't get joy out of torturing people, at least to that length and for that long. I would be cool with it for like maybe 30 minutes, but an eternity, no. So it's I think with every character though, you have shades of that character within you, and you kind of mine that and see what that's about. Yeah.
So, you've played both heroes and villains. Which do you prefer, and what is the difficulties of playing both the protagonist and the antagonist in your view?
Well, I think that the villains color outside. They get to color outside the lines a little more than heroes, and I find that villains are. Both heroes and villains. It depends. They can be very layered, or they can be very one-dimensional. I mean, a lot of heroes in a Western society are one-dimensional in the sense that the interesting thing about their journey is what happens around them while they maintain their heroic nature, and it's them getting hit with a lot of different stresses from the outside, and it doesn't shake them, and so they're kind of the straight man of an adventure. Whereas the villain tries all these dastardly things, and they go to these depths that you don't think about, that the hero can't go to, and so that can be fun too. It just depends on how good your writing is and how good the story is. But I've had the great fortune of being able to play very layered villains and very layered heroes, and then also just your standard, really, like I said, one-dimensional hero and one-dimensional villain. So it just depends. It depends. It's so tricky with voiceover because when you've done, we do so many different roles. I mean, I've done over 250 voiceover roles, and so it's like it's not like with Michael Keaton, something like that. It's like, you're Batman. It's not like he played Batman, Flash, RoboCop, Superman, Aquaman. It's like he played Batman. He did other roles, but as far as heroes go, Batman. And so it's a little bit, I think, a little bit easier to hone in on the machinations of that character because that's your one thing that you did and you lived in that world. And when you do voiceover and you've done, all these things, it's kind of like you live in it for a bit, give a little kiss, you put it in the water, and it floats out into the little zoo of your characters that you've done, Yeah.
I'm going to segue off of his Secaucus from Resident
Yeah.
Empire. He was one of the ultimate ones where he started out good, he kind of went ghoul, evil for a little while. Did you have any challenges of going back and forth with his personality or any of the other characters that pretty much did that same idea?
For me, it's just about setting my anchor into what's happening in the scene, the truth of the character. And as long as you do that, any direction they go, as long as you can find the point that leads back to its origin, can be dealt with, I feel like. So even, that's what makes something like the Joker tricky. Because you never know what he's going to do next. And so it's hard to determine, well, what makes him tick? It'd be easy to just say, like, violence, but it's more than that. And so those are the tricky ones to play, is when you got guys that are out of control like that, because you can't, you have to almost kind of take all the information and then kind of decide on an origin, because I'm sure we've all seen, Dark Knight Rises with Joker. I mean, he has multiple origin stories going, so you're like, well, which one is real? Which one is, so that's tricky. But when you've got characters that have a definable origin, it's a little bit easier to latch on to.
Was it like extremely strenuous on your voice?
Oh yeah, Natsu's very difficult. I when we first started doing it, I could only do like 3 to 4 hours at a time for a couple years. Then I could go up to 6. Then I could go up to 8. Now I'm back down to where I could probably do about 6 before it's time to call it a day. Just because where the voice sits, the voice sits down here, and so it's very, it's taking the vocal cords and scratching them together, and that's just as normal talking about. And then when it's time to yell, it's off the chain. That role, any role where it's like super deep and there's fighting involved, like Blast Rider, also directed by Tyler. Roles that require any war games, like when I did Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, that was strenuous, or when I worked on the video game Rage, where it's nothing but creature yelling. I mean, it takes its toll, big time. And actually that's what they're discussing with the union negotiations right now, about how vocal stress affects actors long term, and making little adjustments to accommodate that. So a lot of times I've been in sessions where they're like, oh, well, let's just take a break for 15 minutes and we'll get right back into it, as opposed to saying like, you know what, we need to wrap it up for today. Let's pick up this session next time. So we're trying to set little goal marks to hit those with the clients, so we'll see what happens. But hopefully stuff like that where it's very vocally stressful gets minimized, for sure.
So, in the booth, voice actors are known tricksters and jokers. So, what are some of your favorite funny moments from in the booth?
Well, all my moments originate usually from Sabat. Chris Sabat really is a genius. It's hard to keep up with him because his train of thought is always so. I'm a much more like inside the lines. Even though there are times when I seem like a color outside the lines a lot, I do have a regimen, and he just does not. He is voice acting's Joker, and it's not for evil though. Just like you don't know what makes him tick, what's he gonna do next, and he's so smart and he's so good at voice acting. In fact, it blew me away one day when we were sitting in his studio and we were finishing up a gig, and he goes, "I was thinking about taking voiceover lessons. I just don't think I don't know if I'm any good." And I go, "Dude, what? Shut up. Like, come closer so I can slap the shit out of you." Like, he's so good, and when you see guys like that, that's the cool part is that you're able to be friends with these geniuses. Like, he's super smart. Sean Schimmel, so smart. Tatum is very smart. And the downside is that they're so smart. You're sitting there, you're like, well, shit, I'm just going to sit back and you guys do your thing. I'll chime in if you guys need a water or something. But there's so many talented people in the industry, especially living in LA and really hanging out with and becoming great friends with folks like, Jess Harnell, who was Wacko from Animaniacs, and Roger Rabbit, and, Rob Paulson, Donatello, and Raphael, and these guys, Bill Farmer, Goofy, I mean, Maurice LaMarche, who's, Brain from Pinky and the Brain. I mean, good Lord, these guys are so talented. And to be able to just sit there and breathe that air is fun. It's really fun.
Okay, I'm just going to take a quick side note. Sabat and Schimmel, Otakon press conference, they walked in, took to the podium and said, we're going to keep this on topic. We're going to handle the conflict in Afghanistan and the crisis by sending over Vegeta to handle ISIS.
Yes. I remember that.
Yeah.
It's a good plan.
That's hilarious.
I wanted to ask you, when I was waiting for you for the autograph session, tons of Natsus walking around, tons of other cosplayers. How does it feel to see people dressed as your characters and other characters, and have you ever cosplayed?
It's very flattering, and I'm honored that people, out of all the characters that you could choose, out of all of fandom, not just anime, anything. I've seen Captain Crunch. I've seen Waldo. So out of literature, out of video games, out of cartoons, out of just any movies, people are walking around as Natsu. They're walking around as Death the Kid. I see a lot of that, and I am so honored by that. And then as far as my cosplay goes, my very first cosplay was Ling from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood when we announced it. I've done Alan Walker. I've done Superman. I've done a partial Batman. I've got a Kylo Ren that's being built right now. The helmet's just about finished, and then I have to go in and get my buddy to put in a vocal processor in there. But the lightsaber was
awesome.
Oh, it's gonna be great. The lightsaber was custom built by a couple of guys. Jeff Johnson was one of the men that dealt with that and did this 3D printing, beautiful work on it, and he scorched the ends to replicate the look on screen. Elizabeth Martinez built the actual custom Kylo Ren outfit, and the helmet's being built by Novos, and so it's gonna be, that's my thing is like, if I'm gonna do cosplay, I gotta do it right, because all eyes are like, well, let's see what you got, and so I want it to be good, so it's almost ready.
You've gone to so many conventions. What are your most common fan requests?
Battles between my characters, an answer to the marriage proposal, a symmetry rant, and one of Natsu's attacks.
So, I'm actually going to flip the script a little bit here, and I want to give you a chance to ask me, an anime fan, a question.
Okay, what's the most stressful aspect of a convention for you?
Well, there's so many. Travel is definitely one of them.
Oh yeah.
I think that goes for everybody, making sure that you get to the hotel on time. For example, I only learned that I had a 10 a.m. Friday panel just earlier this week, and so I had to coordinate and literally leave at 4:30 in the morning because I live in Trenton to catch a train, then hop on a bus after surviving Camden to make it to Atlantic City. Just about like an hour before I had just in time to check in and do all that stuff. So that's stressful. But I think the most stressful part is feeling like you're missing things. Like you're doing all these things, you're going to the gaming room and you're going to dealer's room, and you have all this fun, but you also sometimes feel like, oh, what did I miss?
Yeah.
And it's that, what did I miss? Because these conventions, we are all family, and we don't get to have that sort of family feeling nowhere else.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And so it sounds like it's worth all the travel woes.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
I wanted to know if you could discuss anything you're currently working on or have for future projects.
Star Trek Continues. We just released our 6th episode online. We premiered it at MegaCon in Orlando. That just came out. There's a game that I'm in that's being announced at E3 that I still can't talk about. There's a possible show for Geek and Sundry that might be coming out next month. So there's a lot of fun stuff going on. Audiobook wise, The Conjuring 2 is based on the adventures of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and those books I narrated. Lorraine chose me as a narrator for it. These are the ghost hunters that originated the Amityville horror case, and so Lorraine granted me the honor of being the narrator for her books, and so 3 of them are coming out in the near future. So there's a lot going on. Yeah.
If you could montage your career in one song, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. You know, let's see. Let me look through my. I'm gonna look through my list real quickly because oh, you know what? Duel of the Fates. That's a movie.
That would be awesome.
I
wanna see that.
And so to finish it off, if there's one line from one of your characters that you feel best describes you, what would it be?
I've got a fire in my belly now.
I love it.
WeRiseMag.com